Welcome back to the SportsMax Zone. We continue with football. Trinidad and Tobago Minister of Sport, Shamfo Cudjoe, says the government will disassociate itself financially from TNT Football Association, TTFA, if FIFA goes through with its suspension threat. Last week, FIFA had formally written to the head of the Normalization Committee in place at the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association, Robert Haddad, instructing him to order the deposed TTFA president, William Wallace, to ignore the ruling of High Court and move its dispute with FIFA to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Now, Trinidad and Tobago Sports Minister, Shamfo Cudjoe, in a recent interview with Wired 868, says if the TTFA is suspended, Wallace can expect little funding. There are 54 recognized sporting disciplines under the Ministry of Sport, including bodies like Scrabble and ballroom dancing. Football is among 12 sporting bodies that qualify for higher investment under Sport TT, and which we work with to help their athletes to attain the highest possible level within the world. If they are suspended, there certainly will not be that level of investment we put in right now, which is to get them to the highest international level of their sport, following a certain growth path. You can't feel you will turn your back on the funding and support from FIFA in this Gova season and expect the taxpayers to support you. That will not be happening. Lance, I'm going to turn to you with this response by my Minister of Sport, Shamfo Cudjoe, in response to Wallace and his team.
Well, let me start by saying that I didn't know Minister Cudjoe had been such a spicy individual. Those were some neat words there to suggest that football will get down to the level of Scrabble and ballroom dancing as far as, you know, what it would attract as government support. But obviously, as Sport Minister in TNT, she is not pleased with what is happening with the TTFA and under threat at the moment from FIFA regarding, you know, their move to go to the TNT High Court. Of course, FIFA insisting that these disputes need to be tackled at the Court of Arbitration for Sport, and that, as far as their statutes are concerned, is the way to go. But the United TTFA executives have been very, very defiant. And when we spoke to Brent Sancho a week ago, he was suggesting, which was borne out in some of the newspaper reports I had seen subsequently, that there is a huge part of the football club fraternity and the delegates in TNT who are not in agreement with the position that the United TTFA is taking. And there was a move to have a petition done to get the clubs to stand up and say, you know, Mr. Wallace, this is not what we want. We need you to represent our desires here, which would in the end take the pressure off them as far as FIFA is concerned and allow the Normalization Committee to function as it would normally do when FIFA, you know, puts a mandate down like that.
Well, George is still with us, and I'm going to turn to him now for his comments based on what Minister of Sport Cudjoe said. And of course, George, she has been supported by our Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, because yesterday he said he's in full support of what she said, and he actually echoed the same sentiments.
Well, look, the die has been cast. The wheels are turning. The agenda for the next FIFA Executive Council meeting, which is set for September 18. It will be an online event. Usually this thing will be held in Zurich, FIFA's headquarters. That September 18 FIFA Congress will have a 13-point agenda. Item number 4 on that 13-point agenda is suspension of members. And in that section, there it is, there's a document, suspension of a member. That's where sweet TNT will be slotted in, and the discussion will be had about suspending the TTFA. So today's what? Today's September 1. The TTFA has, I think, 16 days from here. Oh, but FIFA had given a deadline last week.
Yeah, 16.
So I think that deadline may be a little bit shorter than the lag time between now and the start of that FIFA Congress. So, the former, the legendary former Manchester United manager Sir Alex Ferguson spoke about squeaky bum time when to describe that period late in games where players and teams would be getting nervous, wondering if Manchester United would roar back to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. It's squeaky bum time now for the TTFA. Will they blink? Are they going to say, on a point of principle, we're standing for what we believe to be true, we are going ahead with this matter in the local courts, and that would then cause FIFA to kick Trinidad and Tobago out of FIFA to the curb? No one would want to associate with the TTFA because by then the TTFA would be toxic. Trinidad and Tobago would have to play international matches, play matches against the Vatican City and places like that, countries, territories which have no international status, not recognized by FIFA. And it's a very, very daunting thing to even imagine. And I can't believe that we're in this position on this day in sport, not knowing whether or not the challenge will be relinquished, good sense will prevail, and that TNT's football gets the outcome it deserves, which is to remain a member of the FIFA fold, and for the men and women who play for the national team to be able to expand their professional horizons.
George, you say those things and I feel a sort of anger just hearing you spell it out, because that's what the reality will be for our young footballers if this comes to pass. You spoke about good sense prevailing, but William Wallace and his team seems like they're not willing to budge, because now that the Minister of Sport got involved, last week they were supposed to have an online meeting, and of course William Wallace claimed that he didn't at first he said he didn't get the email, so I think they called him and then he said the email was in his junk mail. He basically didn't attend the meeting. So what I'm getting from him is that he's not budging. He doesn't even want to have the discussion with the Prime Minister and of course Minister of Sport. So he's just set in his way, and I don't think he understands that it may come across to him like 2 to 3 years being banned won't really affect him, but it will definitely put Trinidad's football backwards. It'll send us like 10 years backwards, 2 to 3 years. We'll do that.
But the point is, you speak about William Wallace. Clearly, those members of the TTFA, and a significant number, I have to conclude that they believe in the Wallace doctrine. They are supporting Wallace in this court battle, because which football federation or football association will be staring down the barrel of a shotgun, as the TTFA is, and not make moves to take themselves away from that position, steering down the barrel of a shotgun? If it is that the people who make up the TTFA, the majority, were sufficiently upset and sufficiently aware of the dangerous position that the TTFA that Trinidad and Tobago football is in, they would have acted as per the Constitution to get Wallace out, to put the TTFA in the right order, to mend fences with the Normalization Committee, and allow this thing to go away and for football to continue. But they have sat on their hands and they have done nothing. So don't blame William Wallace. William Wallace is not hanging on to a position despite the wishes of the majority of the membership of the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association. He is being left alone to do what he wants to do by persons who, for some reason, can't see the danger that TNT football is in. And so if we blame Wallace, we have to blame the entire TTFA, which is sitting by and watch this happen. And in some parallel universe, maybe you could take some joy out of seeing Trinidad and Tobago out of FIFA by FIFA to see what those who essayed, who authored, who engineered that reality, what they would say after the fact, and what they would say to the thousands of young men and women who would no longer have an immediate career to look forward to, and to a country that would have to sit on the sidelines and watch others play the beautiful game.
Yeah, George, I hear you. I know you had done some robust work on this story, a couple of months ago when it was so fluid and there was so much going on between the ousted TTFA and the Normalization Committee and other football facets in the system. What's your take on the story earlier this week on the gathering of petitions? Because you're saying that the TT executive is sitting there and allowing Wallace to be stubborn on this issue, but does the TTFA represent a host of clubs and football bodies? And if it is that they aren't representing the common view of the football fraternity, why are they being allowed to carry through this project?
Well, that's a question. But I'm saying, Lance, from the grassroots level, based on how Trinidad and Tobago's football is structured, the TTFA, of course, has the overarching, broad-reaching charge of the country's football, and the association provides the members. The members act as delegates at election time, and so they go to the TTFA meetings, and you would like to think that they represent the views of the members who are lower down the food chain. Those members lower down the food chain, based on my understanding, are upset at the possibilities. Clubs that used to provide footballers to the TT Pro League, to the lower leagues in England, to the leagues around the world, who would depend and have their business modeled on getting youngsters, men and women, transition to a higher level from which they can earn transfer fees and keep their business going, are livid. But for some reason, those intermediaries who then represent them at the level of the TTFA haven't seen fit to canvass the concrete perspective or the concrete wish of these lower level organizations, take it to the TTFA and have it represented in the kind of action that would have taken us from here. What I'm saying is this thing has been developing for months now. You spoke about the investigation we did some time ago, and even from that time it was clear to a blind man that we would end up here in this position where FIFA would threaten to kick Trinidad out of world football if this business of the matter between it and the TTFA not resolved at CAS and resolved at a local court. That was on the cards for months now. Why is it now that we're hearing something only last week about, oh, petitions are being gathered and people are being canvassed for their views and a way is being sought to get Trinidad and Tobago out of this position? That should have been done a long time ago. And I'm saying, in some parallel universe where it's not so serious, you would take pleasure, you would take what the Germans call schadenfreude in watching TNT being kicked out of world football, and those responsible for it having to answer to the people whose livelihoods they would have damaged by their foolhardy behavior and the egg-headed way they have gone about a matter that the rules of engagement are clear, and that the fact that the principles that they're standing on is no stronger than a cardboard box or a styrofoam platform. That's the argument I'm making.
Well, George, we're staying with football. Despite the COVID-19 pandemic, fans may again attend football matches live in person. This after German health authorities gave RB Leipzig the green light to allow up to 8,500 home fans to watch their season opener if the coronavirus infection rates in the region remain or decrease than at the current level. All fans will have to wear face masks and will be socially distant in the 42,000-seat stadium. Leipzig will kick off their Bundesliga season on September 20th against Mainz. George, what do you think about this?
Oh, it's an excellent news. It's excellent news. The Germans have managed this pandemic very, very well relative to almost everybody else who's had a problem with COVID-19. And I think, look, there's no, very early in the piece, both of you will remember this, very, very early in the piece, there was this talk about post-COVID-19. There is no such thing as post-COVID-19, but there is such a thing as living with COVID-19. And if anybody believes that we can continue as we have over the past few months, where sports have been shut down, entertainment has been shut down, and people can't go to venues, people can't mass gather, then the challenge now is to find a way to do this without putting people at risk. And so this is a bold step, and we trust the Germans to lead the way. The Germans led the way in the resumption of major European football leagues, and they're leading the way in the reintroduction of fans to stadia for professional top-flight football. 8,500 appropriately spaced in a 42,000-seater facility, that can be manageable. And I think this will set the tone for by the time the English Premier League gets into the winter months in November and December, we'll see fans in the stands for the Champions League games, because that's what we want. That's what makes sport what it is.
Well, we're seeing some light. So we're going to take a short commercial break and we come back with Interactive.